Hi, I'm Evan. This is our fourth talk from Yellow Brick Cinema, the team that helped build Relaxation on YouTube. Today, we're here with Jason, Sean, Claire, and myself, and we're going to be talking about the guilt of relaxation and why taking a break is good for your mind and body. Obviously, we're all workaholics here, and sometimes we often forget to relax ourselves and take a break, and we shouldn't feel guilty for relaxing. So I think we should just dive into it and talk about why it's okay to sometimes just take a break, relax, not stress about, getting that email sent out and doing all this other stuff that we need to do, and sometimes just relax, because I find it's very important for mental health and also physical health.
Yeah, I mean, particularly, Western culture. I mean, Americans listening to this, I mean, America was founded by people who were so uptight the British kicked them out. So, nose to the grindstone work ethic is good and it's important, but every now and then for your own balance and your own efficiency, if nothing else, you gotta unplug a little.
Well, and this is such a great topic because there's so many layers to it. Like, for example, knowing when it's time to take a step back, recharge, relax, being able to identify when that threshold is, then also really knowing what's relaxing. Because I feel like as times have changed, a lot of what's available for people to do as customers isn't necessarily designed to be relaxing. It's designed for engagement. You hear the word engagement thrown around a lot in key metrics for different entertainment platforms and so forth. And this doesn't equate to relaxing. And then finally, thinking about when it's time to step back from work is one thing, right? As Jason says, there's a lot of pressure for people to work, be productive, and so forth. And that's in some ways that's built a really good world. In other ways, it's burned some people out. But what do you do when you have obligations to other people, friends, people you love, and it's those things that you're saying, hey, I need to take a step back, take some time for me, relax a little bit. How do you draw those boundaries? This is a great topic.
Well, it's funny because growing up, as I get older, I used to go out when I was younger, as most people did, but as I get older, I turn down people to go out, and whether it's go out to have a drink or go out to hang out with them or do whatever. And instead, I turn it down to go and relax at home, just to sit back and use that time to relax. And it does, I feel guilty of it. I feel like I'm letting that person down. But in a sense, I shouldn't feel that way. I should feel that I need a rest. Usually all week when I wake up to sleep, I'm thinking about work stuff. I'm thinking about, all kinds of stuff that I can do. And sometimes it's good to do that. And I know it's not healthy. I think we should communicate with people a little better than that. But yeah, I think it is important to rest your mind and body sometimes, because you feel much more refreshed.
I think you're right, Evan, and we spend all day communicating with people, whether it's verbally or by text or email. We're always switched on and we're always contactable. There's no turning it off. So you can spend 4 weeks not leaving the house and not socializing, but you're still communicating with people every single day, and you can get sort of peopled out, if you know what I mean.
Let's take it one step further, actually. This is, I think, a permutation for Claire and Sean, because you guys are parents. And so let's add another layer of challenge onto this. Balancing the needs of raising a child versus the psychological need to be 100% yourself so that you can be an effective parent. And I think this is particularly apropos because you see so much in the news cycles about how birth rates are dropping, etc. The challenge of trying to raise a family on top of everything else, and then when when do you find time to prioritize, and do you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself? Because I mean, Evan and I are not parents. I'm an overgrown child and always will be. But I'm kind of curious to get your guys' perspective on that.
Yeah, it's really astute of you to even think of that, Jason. It's not something many people it's not easy for people to put themselves in the shoes of a parent. Until you become a parent, you don't realize how crazy it is. And you're spot on. It becomes increasingly difficult to relax. You just have an endless to-do list, and you're responsible for people, not just yourself. Things that you could let slide in the household, if you're on your own or living with a partner, just can no longer be left when you've got kids. They have to have stable environments, and things have to work, and they have to have decent food, and you can't always grab a takeout. And it's so true. And when you do sit and relax, you literally just sit there thinking of all the things you should be doing and could be doing, and to benefit both you and your child or children. And it really is so difficult to find that balance when you're a parent, and you're exhausted on top of it. If anyone needs that relaxation, it's parents. I mean, Sean would know. He's in the trenches at the moment with sleepless nights. I know that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. This is probably the big shift for me in what I've found relaxing and restorative as a person. Okay, so in a nutshell, these days being alone is not relaxing. These days, I'm relaxed when everybody else is good, right? So when I know for certain the rest of the family is all set for the moment, and whatever we need to get out of the way, like Claire's talking about, and everything we need to set up, when everybody's good, when everybody's looked after, when everybody's got whatever they need, that's when my relaxation potential begins. Now, whether or not I move on that potential is another story, but that's when the opportunity begins. And so, take something that would have been very relaxing or restorative for me as a kid, which would be hiking or something like this. And it could be with friends, it could be by myself, right? It could be just a beautiful moment in nature by yourself. Pick a place you like, beautiful beach, beautiful forest. You go walk around there by yourself, move your body, or you just go sit there by yourself, cut off from your phone. Well, this is one of the most stressful environments I can imagine at the moment, because the odds are, if you have young children, they're not in the middle of the woods with you, or they're not at the top of the mountain with you. You're not going to do some kind of physically taxing mountain climb and then sit at the top looking out over a beautiful valley if you've got young children. So the odds are that if you've done that in the past hour or two, they're not with you. And I find myself in that situation not relaxed. So that's a big switch. I really enjoy now having everybody around, making sure everybody's good. And I could be deeply relaxed in a very loud, seemingly chaotic moment, right? Where there's little people making lots of noises, doing lots of things, but as long as I know they're good to go, then I can say, okay, I know I can take the next few minutes for me. And this is where relaxation technique comes in, because you gotta ask yourself, well, what is relaxing? Well, doom scrolling on your phone is certainly not, at least not for me. But things like meditation, right? So when they're in a loud room, or in on a crowded plane, or that sort of thing, that can be very helpful. The discipline to turn your mind off, or taking a moment to read a good book, or even just a thought, right? Just pushing through the full scope of a thought. But I think you really nailed it. The big shift for me is going from, did I cut out there right at the good part? Where did I cut out? Tell me.
Just 5 seconds prior.
Pretty cliffhanger. Oh yeah, well that's the big shift, right? Is going from being able to step out of situations to now needing to carefully curate the environment and then relax within it, whether it's loud and seemingly chaotic or very pleasant and calm. That's the important part.
Well, you bring up a good point here. A lot of people, as we ask these questions, everyone has their own type of relaxation, but ultimately, how does someone know if they need to be relaxed? I know that sometimes, what are signs that people, in your guys' opinions, and what you've experienced, that people need relax without them knowing it? I mean, for instance, for myself, I started having like eye twitches. I started having, heart palpitations. I think I was just overstressed. I think stressed and it was just a combination of things that my body was telling me. And I started doing a little research, and I find that when I started being more stressed and everything, I started getting eye twitches. And I know there's different causes for that: overstimulation and caffeine, and anxiety and all this other stuff. But sometimes I just needed, ultimately I just needed a break and just needed to rest. And I'm curious on what you guys noticed. What are signs that maybe you need rest, or signs that just in general people need rest that they might not know?
I mean, some of the more common physiological symptoms, which certainly I've experienced in the past, if I'm like super stressed, I can start to get very terse and start to kind of snap at people a bit if there's just too many spinning plates, etc., which is fairly common, but that's usually a sign. Certainly if you start experiencing physical symptomology, so you start having issues with digestion or chest pains or eye twitching, as you mentioned, anything like that. I mean, that's your body's way of trying to tell you, look, bro, you need to chill, okay? Because either you're gonna pump the brakes or we're gonna do it for you. So those are some of the more immediate signs I can think of.
Yeah, 100%. Spot on with the physical stuff. For me, another one is just not being able to fully enjoy things that I would normally enjoy doing. So if I'm out somewhere or even just at home doing something that ordinarily would be relaxing for me or enjoyable, I find my mind drifting off to all the things I have to do, or just like, wishing it was over. Like, okay, on to the next, because I've got stuff to do, I'm stressed or I'm busy. So also being a parent, not being able to enjoy time with my kids. So if one of my kids needs me and wants to play with me or do something that I'd ordinarily enjoy doing, I find myself just needing it to be done. It's a horrible position to be in, but I find that's something that comes out when I'm particularly stressed.
An interesting one for me that precedes those prior to, so if I pay attention, I can catch it, is when very small, mundane things start to take a long time or become very difficult. To give you a specific example, is say I need to pay a bill. And to do this, I need to look up an account login and a password. And everyone has 100 of these or 1,000, unless you use a password manager. For some reason, I still don't. So you got to look up some kind of login credentials. And this goes from a 60-second thing that you're just excited to get through to 10 minutes. You can't you just can't quite, that's a sign to me that, hey, this won't be so hard if I just take 15 minutes and chill out, or so something along those lines, right? I'm probably getting to the end of my productive, focused bandwidth right now. So you've got to do something to recharge. It could be move around. Could also be take a few minutes and think about nothing. But that to me is a very specific indicator to pay attention.
Along those lines, I hadn't thought of this until you mentioned that. Something where I know my stress level is reaching peak overflow. Stress-induced headaches. I mean, I suffered from migraines since I was a teenager, but it just gets worse and worse and worse if I've got something that's preying on me. And it could be something really easy, but if there's just a bunch of stuff, it's bad when you wake up and you're already, your head is just pounding like a taiko drum. That's a physiological symptom that I think a lot of people get. I certainly get stress-induced headaches because you're just not relaxing while you're sleeping. And so, you're in a bad position, you wake up at a bad angle, and I will admit, I know this probably sounds like a shameless plug, but as Mark Twain would say, it has the added benefit of being true. That is actually where relaxing music does tend to help a bit, is if I am cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, sometimes having a little bit of external stimuli like that when I'm sleeping just kind of it's like a force reset on the brain.
That was where I was going to segue into, because a lot of people actually have no choice. They can't relax. For instance, Claire and Sean and Jason, you guys are all very busy, especially if you have children, is you have so many duties, you can't relax. And so what do you do in the instances where you just cannot relax? And I mean, this is, as you said, this is a shameless plug, but sometimes listening to Yellow Brick Cinema, the number one but listening to Yellow Brick Cinema is actually, or a relaxing music actually helps while you do your work in the background. It really does. I have, as someone that has ADHD, as you could tell when I stutter and try to talk, I got like a million words trying to come out at once. So I always stutter, but when I have to listen to music when I do work, because it stimulates my brain. It makes me calm. It makes me relaxing. I don't listen to hardcore, music. I listen to really soft music and stuff that I don't even recognize in the background. I almost feels like I'm not listening to it, but it's there. And that's why, we design music like this, because it helps. It stimulates the brain, but it doesn't keep you it doesn't take your focus off and focusing on the music, because it doesn't disturb you, but it keeps you relaxed. And I do find this extremely relaxing for myself. But also, I'm curious on what other options or alternatives people use to relax when they can't have time to relax, whether it's having a kid or a child, or it's just work overload.
I mean, the big challenge, I think, and this is the hard one. We come from a culture that makes you feel guilty if you're not going at 110% at all times. It is very much sink or swim, winner take all. And it's like, congratulations, you're a newborn fetus. Now let's get your LinkedIn profile up and going. And that's just the world that we live in, for better or worse. And that ethic, on one hand, you can achieve great things. You can split the atom. You can build, the USS Gerald Ford. You can do incredible feats like that. On the flip side, there is a price tag in terms of health. And certainly there is that difficulty of, how do you manage the Pavlovian response of, I feel guilty for trying to take a little time off. It takes a long time to deprogram that, if ever, I think.
Yeah, I haven't it's funny because when I started working, since I'm 16 years old, I think I've only taken off, I can't even imagine. I rarely have taken off in my entire life. I just always work through it. I'm like, I got always just going in it. And sometimes I forget about relaxing, especially living in Thailand. This is where people come to relax, and here I am never relaxing. So it's kind of a weird paradigm, but it's really actually I'm at a loss of words. It's just really strange.
Well, it also depends on what's going on. And that's a big difference maker. So what Jason just said about the world of LinkedIn profiles and a lot of mental work and how that can lead to decision fatigue, and also the required to present various attributes and be in marketing mode all the time. That's draining in a different way than a physical job where you start a shift of any duration and then you do physical work that'll allow you to get into a physical flow state after. And I've done both, so I can tell you that one is way less stress inducing than the other. The physical work tends to be it's physical work that you're uninterrupted and allowed to basically just do. Can be, then it makes sense to take a break in 2-3 hours physically, and then maybe stretch and then get back to whatever you're doing. So the mental load is unique, and I think that of white collar type work, and people are still figuring out how to deal with it. I think this is a new phenomenon, and I actually mean new to human civilization. And then when you incorporate computers and their connectivity to it, then it's a phenomenon within a phenomenon. And so that's why the solution to one could be take a walk. If you've been sitting at a desk all day, get up, move around, just take a walk around your room, take a walk around the office. If you need to continue working, that's why we all came together around relaxed music. Is relaxed music was something that organically emerged to all of us, and that can just be very soothing to a mind overcome by decision fatigue.
I think we all suffer from chronic busyness. There's just a hustle culture, and it's different to the days, back in the day, working the production line in the factory, and you pick up your little suitcase and you go to work and you clock in, and then you do what you need to do, and you clock out at 6 p.m. and you walk home, and that's it. You're done for the day. Your mind can focus on your family, your rest, what you're doing, your weekend can start. It was very rigid in that sense, and there was clear lines between relaxation time and work time. And in today's world, we just don't live like that. We're always switched on. We're always checking emails. There isn't really a cutoff. And even if you do work a 9-to-5 job, there's this expectation of having a side hustle for a lot of people. And it makes it even more difficult to find those ways to relax. And even if it is something as basic as listening to some music or going for a walk, you've got to schedule that in between 24 hours of hustle and the expectation of being busy, and not falling behind the societal expectation that you are, hustling or trying to get ahead or just being productive in general.
I think you put it.
And Claire touches on a really good point. Right. Oh, sorry. Claire touches on a really good point, which is that's actually the world that split the atom, built cars, built railroads, built computers, built the internet. So that world of uninterrupted work, sometimes physical, sometimes at a keyboard, that's actually the world where we have good data on outcomes. We don't really have good data on outcomes of the past, of the world of perpetual busy. So this is something that's really important to think about.
I often think about this a lot. I think about, I like to build things. I like to design things, and I always think about back in the day. It was very traditional. As Claire mentioned, you work your 9-to-5, you go home, you're with the family, you spend the time, you eat dinner all together. And then maybe you watch a TV show at the end of the night, and then you relax. But now we have the presence of social media. You go on social media after your work hours, then you look at and see everyone else's, you see, kids driving Lamborghinis, and you go, oh, I'm so far behind, and like, I gotta keep going, and then it stresses you out. You feel like you're not accomplished enough. And there's no real point to relaxation, because then you want to keep working, or then you either want to keep working, or you fall in almost like a depressive hole where you feel like, I almost want to just give up. And it's interesting, and I think that's maybe why people built, in my opinion, better things. I mean, I don't know, it goes two sides, because people built, we always look at things back in the day, how they were built, and I always think that they were constructed better. How the mechanics work were just more thought through and well put together. And maybe that comes down to relaxation. Maybe they don't have any distractions. They can focus on the problem, the task, instead of just getting it out there and making as much profit as possible and moving on to the next one. There was no relaxation. It was let's make the most money possible, instead of let's create the best product as possible. And yeah, it's a strange shift over time that we're seeing. And I only think that it's going to get worse before it gets better, because we're going to get constantly wanting more stimulation, more dopamine. And we ultimately have to find a solution to counteract that with relaxation, because at some point it's just going to, I've seen kids that everywhere I go here in Asia, I see kids all at dinner tables. Every one of them is on a phone and an iPad. I see kids on an iPad and a phone at the same time, multitasking. I'm like, how is that going to be? How is this kid going to grow up? Where's the relaxation? I feel like you have to be stimulated, and you're gonna be burnt out. So yeah, it's hard to it's hard to define, and it's hard to figure out what's relaxing for everyone. But ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, is find and figure out what's relaxing to people and how to relax people in such a chaotic and driven world through social media and everything.
Well, take it one step further, scale it up from the virtual environment of like social media and the internet, what have you, into physical environment. For instance, I'm Generation X. The year that I was born, 1/3 of the human race was urbanized. Today, it's over half. That is a massive jump in the percentage of the human race that has urbanized. It's projected by the year 2050 that's going to increase to 2/3. That's personal opinion. That's not good. The idea of, humans have been living in cities and large settlements, obviously, for millennia, but the population centers that we have today are so massive. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that image of Greater Tokyo superimposed over the UK, but it takes up like a decent chunk of the entire UK. That's how big that city is. And in my personal opinion, it's one of the reasons why I got out of the big city. As a species, I don't think we've evolved yet to the point where we've caught up with these, concrete edifices we've built to our own glory. And I think there are very real psychological impacts, light pollution and noise pollution being the two most obvious. As a species, we're wired for, the sun goes down, you have darkness. Artificial light has only been around for, 150 years, thereabouts? Sean mentioned a moment ago, we don't have that much hard data on this. And I think, this is my own personal theory, I think that there is going to come a point, and it will be out of necessity, and it will come probably in about 4 generations, where we have to have a dramatic rethink of how to structure a society, because what we are currently doing, we're doing some incredible stuff. The world has shrunk to a point, the way that Arthur C. Clarke predicted back in 1968. But the cost has been utterly massive, and I would argue is not sustainable. Just when change happens faster than a species can adapt, weird things start happening, and we're seeing that already.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to bring that up. I always constantly think about what's the future look like. I kind of like, I just map different directions of where we're headed as humans. And the optimistic side of me thinks that we are going to be oversaturated with AI content. We're going to be oversaturated, overstimulated, and people will want to go back to almost a reality where we only get the essentials. We will be so done with social media because it will be, you don't know what's real, what's fake. You don't want to see what's online. And this is more of the optimistic side of me speaking, that I hope that comes true. But I hope that, cell phones in a sense will be almost done with. You're just going to hold maybe a small device that gives you critical information. Everything else will be maybe fed to you by maybe AI or some kind of integration. And maybe that will be the next stepping stone after a cell phone, because there has to be, in my eyes, a tipping point where people will be, they've seen it all. They don't know what's real, they don't know what's fake. It's just, nothing seems fun anymore. And then you go outside and you experience real world and you go, actually, it's not that bad. It's actually quite nice. I go on the train here sometimes, and I look down, and I just look across and I see every person looking down on their phone. They're not paying attention. They're not present in the world. Anything could happen. They wouldn't know. They're just so focused on their phone. And I hope there is a tipping point where that changes, and we do see more people coming back to relaxing and being real. Thank you for my TED Talk.
Yeah, I mean, in today's world, I think we need relaxation more than ever. We're so overstimulated, and there's just information overload. And if anything, our need for relaxation and stress relief is just continually increasing, and we're not getting it. They did that study. I think it was in Europe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if they tried it in the States. The 4-day work week. And as far as I remember, the results were pretty amazing. It was increased employee well-being. There was reduced stress and burnout, better job satisfaction. I know it's not for everyone. It can't work in every setting, and in certain instances, I'm sure it can increase the stress, for certain people. But just the fact that someone out there is thinking of the fact that we need more downtime. And I don't know, did any of you sort of follow that and see the same or hear about the same results?
I have seen a little bit of it, but I haven't followed the exact results of how effective it was. If they're willing to, maybe try a 1-day work week. I would be willing to be a test subject for that and see if that would be something that
But you stick to it,
I don't know, maybe I'll ask for a 0-day work week, then after I'm like, well, actually, that's not too bad.
I mean, one of the this is getting into slightly deeper territory, but because I have seen the data from those studies, and it is extremely promising. And one of the theories that's been discussed is, okay, how do you drive further engagement with the workforce at large? Because you're always going to have a percentage of people who are just so genuinely into whatever it is they're doing that they're going to work 70, 80-hour weeks or longer because they're that deeply passionate about it. But for the majority of the human race, obviously that is not the case. So how do you keep a workforce engaged in such an environment? And one of the interesting theories that's been advocated is something similar to what the Gore Corporation has done. They make Gore-Tex and all that, where they divide their business units into groups of no larger than 150 people. So the idea being it replaces the sense of community that we have lost as a species through urbanization, where it's a business unit where you know everyone, but you're not on top of everyone. It's just large enough, just small enough. It's the sort of Goldilocks theory. And they measured it. And it's, where do you get peak efficiency? The second interesting proposal that I've seen floated out there, actually isn't anything new, it's been proposed in the past, is the idea that a massive restructuring of how a corporate entity exists, wherein workers would by default have skin in the game. As a company does better, they would automatically be shareholders and they would do better. So that's another interesting theory that's been proposed to nullify the effects of, you see a company doing really well, does that translate to your own day-to-day life? Because we have seen that one of the great stressors on modern living is something that Evan just brought up, which is, keeping up with the Joneses, where you have, for instance, in the US, half of all economic activity is driven by the top 10% of the population. And we have seen this before. It was the Gilded Age in America. So we have data on this. And the question is, will we make better choices this time around? My guess is probably not, because the way that the human brain works, we don't make choices until our backs are up against the wall, and then it's forced upon us. So it's kind of a backwards way of saying we will get to a better place, but the price tag will be high before we get there.
You touch on some really interesting things, because we can speak to this. We are a small team, right? And we know what it's like to be a small team where there is inherent camaraderie in doing stuff, and everybody is tackling things as a group. And if one of us loses, we all lose, right? And if we win together. We all. And that's very different from working in a big environment where you don't know the people and there's not that sense of camaraderie. And so one of your happy places might not be your work environment. That's a big binary, right? If you like your job, and it's really, what do you like about the job? You like the people. Well, if you like the people in your job, well, your workday can be a lot of fun. It can be a source of great fulfillment, not a source of stress. It can actually be where you go instead of when you're stressed out, right? And then secondly, the kind of work people are doing, and then the responsibilities people have in the background to keep up with the Joneses can be incongruous after a certain point. And not only is a lot of wealth and capital concentrated right now, but there's an interesting phenomenon that's been written about in different books, which is real. And I'll spare you the need to read some of these very dry economics books. But basically, when the return on capital invested beats return on wage growth, or when the return on financialized capital beats return on capital vectored towards doing things, right? If I say I could get a better return on financialized pursuits versus starting a new YouTube channel, or starting a restaurant, or starting a concrete business, or an HVAC business, doing actual things, right, that are demonstrable to real audiences or real customers, then you get this weird thing. You get this weird dislocation where the more people work doesn't really correlate with how they're able to keep up with the Joneses or where they land in terms of financial peace of mind. And this is like really, really bad. And there's a book that a lot of people, there's a book that not enough people read. It's very long and very dry. And this is like 10 years ago. But that general thesis is proving out. And where does it net out? Well, it nets out with a lot of people who are working longer hours for perceivably less outcome because of the effects of inflation. And you get assets that are superheated because of inflation. So if you're on the asset side of things, if you're on the financial side of things, you're doing very well. And if you're not, then you're like, well, what do I do? And everybody, just FYI, a lot of pictures of social media of Lamborghinis are fake, right? There is a business of renting Lamborghinis to people, or renting sets that resemble private jets to people so they can take pictures of themselves in them, so they can trick each other online into thinking they're doing very well. But this creates like an unfulfillable mania that is deeply, privately, I think, probably just depressing. Right, but publicly stigmatized to acknowledge. So I would say I would try to avoid all of them. Try to do real things and try to really be able to identify sources of joy and also sources of recharge or relaxation. And it's so important, going back to the conversation earlier, know what those red flags are. Know when you're starting to get overloaded, when things are taking you longer than you should, or when you're not finding enjoyment or whatever. Identify those red flags and then do things that are good for you, that you know will help you.
Now, there's a tipping point here. I think we all can agree that relaxation is good, and we all should take a break sometimes and relax. But I think there is a teeter-totter effect where when you relax too much and spend too much time relaxing, it can almost be depressive. And this is my personal opinion, is then you feel like when you don't do enough, because you relax too much, it starts to become detrimental to your mental health and your personal life. And I'm curious on your guys' opinions on whether or not relaxing is too much of it is also a negative effect.
It's an interesting hot take. This may be a case of individual wiring. I mean, certainly everyone here in this group, we are all, I think, also workaholics. For me, I need a sense of accomplishment daily. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but I need to feel like by the time that I go to sleep, to satisfy a physiological need, which is to recharge, I need to feel like I did anything that moved me forward in life towards a goal. And that can be a very small thing. It could be, hey, I remembered to do the dishes today, or put away the laundry or something like that. But without that, then, because we are a species that is acutely aware of its own mortality. So to your point, it's, if you've done nothing, then it's, okay, that feeling of worthlessness can creep in, or that sense of, what have I done with my existence to justify it? And it may be different for other people, and it may change with age, but I'm certainly wired where it's, okay, I can look at my day and go, I accomplished something. I can feel good about that, and therefore I can now rest.
Yeah, for sure. Productivity equals dopamine for me. And I think you see it with people who either are retired or don't have jobs, don't work, or, they're the stay-at-home parent, for example. And in so many cases, they find something whether it's working like a charitable work, or picking up trail running or training for marathons. There's often something that has to be accomplished, even if it's not, working a typical job. So I fully agree. Too much relaxation, it could lead to brain rot and feelings of, basically being detrimental to your self-worth, because we all need to do something to feel good about ourselves. Sitting on the couch, vegging, or watching TV all day is definitely not going to be good for mental health.
Oh, this is very real. And this gets into defining what is good for you, right? So, and defining leisure. So the concept of leisure has changed over the past, say, few hundred years, and then also the past few decades, where there are these leisure industries that didn't exist at scale 100 years ago. When you say I want to relax today, so I want to go for a nice walk in the woods or something, or just go to a nice field and look at the clouds, right? This is something people have been doing thousands of years. Or meditation, same thing. Something people have been doing for thousands of years, and it works as well as it has done for that entire run, right? Which is it's pretty good. There are good forcing functions to prevent you from doing too much of that, and once you get going, it's hard to do too little of it, because a lot of people like doing it But things like, oh, I want to relax. Okay, what do? I want to watch TV. Well, a lot of TV is oriented at keeping you watching. And this is, so you see, the people are at cross purposes here, because you have the audience saying, stressed out about something, stressed out about decision fatigue and work, busy work, turn on the TV. And the commercials on TV are meant to make you make a purchase. So often they're vectored towards like a feeling of deficiency, like, hey, you have a problem, you need this. And there's a call to action, whether subtle or explicit. And programming is built around conflict. And I don't mean that in a bad way, just that dramatic content is built around conflict. That's how you drive the story, right? Stories are, so it's rare that a story is deeply relaxing, right? It's often like, oh, there's a person with a problem and they have to grow to solve the problem in that episode or in that film, what have you. And then the news is all problems. It's not like, here are 10 things that'll make you feel good. It's here are 10 problems, because it's meant to keep you watching through the commercials. And then there's another category of here are 10 things that'll make you feel good, but and then that's on a lot of social media. But you got to be careful about that, because it's meant to drive engagement. So it's meant to keep you engaged with whatever that content source is. And then you look up and an hour's gone by or half an hour's gone by, and like everyone's saying, you haven't really engaged yourself in a meaningful way, and you don't feel good. You feel like, oh, I feel like I let this day or what have you slip by, and it creates a very negative cycle. So that's why we are advocates of music, because you can listen to music while you work, or while you're sitting around chilling out, or while you're hiking or whatever, lifting weights, whatever it is. And it's really there for you as much as you need it, and it's not really pushed at an audience. We don't look at engagement metrics, or it's like, we're not trying to keep you binge watching the next episode with really powerful cliffhangers at the end of the prior episode. So but it's clear thing that if you sit around and do nothing, you're probably not going to be happy about it. But for thousands of years, that hasn't been what relaxation is. That's that plus consumption are a really new phenomenon that we're grappling with.
As I look at this as a whole, I see and I've lived, I'm here 37 years later, or almost 37 years now, but it's weird because I look at our analytics, and there is a large majority of young people listening to our music. I mean, there are from 18 to 34 is our largest demographic of our relaxation music, something that I would never expect. While when I was in my 20s, the last thing I would probably listen to was relaxation music, because relaxing to me was sitting at home playing Call of Duty or doing, something, playing a game, and I could relax forever, it felt like, when I was, but now as I get older, I'm in my mid-30s, I find that, as Jason said, that every day I feel like I have to progress in some way. I get almost anxious when I don't. I feel stressed almost when I don't feel accomplished every single day, like I'm pushing it forward. And I don't know if this is kind of almost like human nature thing. As we're young, we're more careless. As we get older, we start to realize, okay, well, now time, pressure, and just overall, we have to start earning more. We have to start creating our lives, and it stresses us out, and we need relaxation through it. And then I think there comes a point where maybe later in life you put in all the work, you've relaxed, because you would think that our analytics would show that 60-plus-year-olds would watch YouTube and relax too, but you don't find that. And maybe that's ultimately when people are finally like, you know what, I'm fully relaxed. I've worked my whole life, and now I can just finally just relax, and that's what retirement's about. And Yeah, it's very interesting because I didn't think about this when I was younger, but I also think about how I see my my mom, and how I see other people in their 60s, 70s, and how relaxed they are. I'm like, how can you relax? But I feel like I just want to work my entire life. But I guess um, there must be a shift in later in life. And I do think there's been a shift in the past 15 years or so, where now you want to relax as a younger person, because everything is so stressful.
Well, that's the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I mean, one thing that happens as you get older is you become acutely aware that there are more days behind you than there are ahead of you. And it's an interesting psychological shift. Particularly, one of the things that happens is, physically it becomes harder to do certain things. Like, I turned 40 and my butt fell off. And it gets harder to do certain things as you get older. And so, you have to really be focused on, okay, with the time I have left, what am I going to get done? And I firmly believe purpose solves a lot of problems. Because when you feel you have a purpose and you're achieving that purpose, it validates the time and energy that you do expend, and then gives you the psychological justification to go, okay, I've done this, I've achieved this, now I've got my direction and my momentum, now I'm going to take a well-earned rest. And you also appreciate it and savor it a bit more, because you do know that time is short. Carl Jung once famously said that life begins at 40 and everything prior to that is research. And I didn't really understand that until I got on the far side of 40. And I'm like, okay. That actually is the truth. And it's an interesting shift that happens.
I think another part of this is that our folks, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s grew up in a completely different time. I mean, that goes without saying, where there was far less comparison happening. Of course, they knew that there was, the middle class, the wealthy, the lower class. They obviously knew that. They could read headlines about billionaires and tech moguls and that sort of thing. But there was no social media. You weren't constantly bombarded with what hundreds of your friends were doing, how they were being portrayed, the houses they were living in, the cars they were driving, the fancy vacations they were going. So there was, it was a lot more. They had their blinkers on for the most part. They lived in their bubble. They looked after their family. They did their 9-to-5 jobs, and their sort of meter of success was based on how comfortable they were. Was their family fed? Did they have a roof over their heads? Did they have a car? Were they comfortable financially? And that was that. They carried on with their lives. Whereas we face a really, really difficult challenge of constant comparison. Even I think it was you spoke about people, or maybe it was Jason, about people hiring jets to make it look like, they have connections or own the jet or whatever. We are constantly bombarded with that. So we are measuring our success against everyone else, whereas I think people who are now in the retired phase of their lives grew up differently and didn't have that on top of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Social media has blown out everything out of proportion. Nothing is real. I mean, most things aren't real that you see. You see people, I know this firsthand, I've seen it. And a lot of people believe it is, and that's stressing. It's very stressful to them. And I understand it is. Society puts so much pressure on you to do well, to be a crypto millionaire, or start a business, do this, and it's not. The reality is, it's not like that. Everyone goes through a lot of struggles. Everyone's in a lot of debt, and everyone has to relax. And it's okay to take a break sometimes. It's okay. So, I mean, in summary, it's 100%. You shouldn't feel guilty to relax once in a while. You need it. Your brain needs it. Your body needs it. Mental health, everything overall needs it. And it's just something that we need as humans, especially now in this day and age where we are, like you said, Claire, bombarded with social media of just not truthful things, and we get so anxious and everything. It's sometimes you just gotta sit back and relax and take a breath, and then recalibrate, because everything's gonna be all right. The world is not as crazy and as wild as you think it is. It's very everyone's going through a lot of the same stuff that you are, and so in summary, Jason, I know someone commented last week when he said llama, because they listened to the whole thing. Do you have a word for this week to see if someone comments and see if they listen to the full thing?
Alpaca.
Alpaca. All right, the alpaca word of the day. But seriously, guys, thank you everyone for listening to this. And if you made it to the end, I would really appreciate it. And tell us in the comments what you think we should talk about next week, and secret code word of what Jason should use. So again, thank you, Jason, Sean, Claire. I really appreciate it. And everyone else that listens to YBC. We really do listen to you. We really want to make music that relaxes you and also makes your life a lot better. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everybody.